In 1955, a machinist at Ford's River Rouge plant punched a coworker in the parking lot, shook his hand the next morning, and both men kept their jobs. The foreman watched the whole thing. These were the unspoken rules of the American factory floor. Never written down, never explained, enforced harder than any company policy. Number 14 would trigger a lawsuit today. Number 3 was outright theft, and management allowed it. Hit that subscribe button because your grandfather lived by a code that is now completely extinct. Let us count down. Number 25. Never touch another man's toolbox. A machinist's toolbox was the most sacred object in the plant. A Kennedy chest filled with micrometers, calipers, and hand-ground cutting tools represented 20 years of paydays. A good micrometer cost $12 in 1954, nearly a full day's wage. Men bought their tools one at a time, engraved their initials into the steel, and arranged every drawer in an order only they understood. Opening another man's box without permission was not a mistake. It was an accusation waiting to happen. If a tool went missing anywhere on the floor, the man seen near an open box that was not his carried suspicion for years. New hires learned this rule within their first hour, usually from a single hard look. Even the foreman asked before borrowing. Today, most shops supply company tools in shared cribs, tracked by badge scan. But in 1955, a man's toolbox was his resume, his savings account, and his signature, all locked in one steel chest. Number 24. The new man took the worst job and kept his mouth shut. Every plant had a job nobody wanted: the paint pit, the pickling tanks, the furnace door in July, chipping slag in the foundry where the air tasted like burnt metal. That job belonged to the newest man on the floor, automatically, without discussion, until someone newer walked through the gate. Complaining did not get you moved. Complaining got you noticed, and being noticed as a whiner in your first month was a sentence that followed you for a decade. The old hands watched how you handled it. Did you show up? Did you keep pace? Did you keep quiet? A man who took the punishment job without a word for 6 months earned something no company could give him: acceptance. Then one day, without ceremony, an older worker would show him a trick that made the job easier, and he knew he was in. Today, we call this a hostile onboarding experience. In 1953, they called it Tuesday. Number 23. Smoking at your machine. Look at any photograph of an American factory floor from the 1950s and count the cigarettes. Men ran drill presses with a Lucky Strike hanging from their lips. Welders lit their next smoke off the torch. Ashtrays made from piston heads sat on every workbench. A pack cost about 23 cents, and the average man on the line went through a pack and a half per shift. Smoking was not tolerated, it was assumed. Foremen smoked while they chewed you out. The union reps smoked during grievance meetings. The only places off limits were around solvents and the paint department, and even those rules bent when nobody was looking. A man who did not smoke had to explain himself. Cigarette breaks did not exist because the entire shift was a cigarette break with machinery attached. Today, lighting a cigarette inside a manufacturing facility gets you escorted out the gate before lunch, and rightly so. But your grandfather timed his workday in cigarettes, and so did every man around him. Number 22. Beer at lunch was nobody's business. Across the street from every major plant in America sat a tavern that opened at 6 a.m. for the night shift coming off and served the day shift at noon. In Milwaukee, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, men walked out at the lunch whistle, drank 2 beers and a shot in 25 minutes, and walked back through the gate to run stamping presses. A glass of beer cost a dime, a shot of whiskey, a quarter. The Boilermaker was named for the men who drank it. Nobody considered this drinking on the job. Drinking on the job meant a bottle at your machine, and even that had its own rule, which we will get to later. 2 beers at lunch was simply lunch. Foreman drank at the same bar, 3 stools down, and saw nothing. Today, 1 beer at lunch in a plant with moving machinery is instant termination. In 1956, it was a ham sandwich with a side of Pabst. Number 21. You never talked to the foreman about another man. This was the deepest rule on the floor, the one underneath all the others. Whatever you saw, whatever you knew, you did not carry it to the office. A man could watch his neighbor sleep through half a shift behind a stack of pallets and say nothing. He could see product get scrapped and hidden, see a man come in drunk, see the timecard tricks, and his answer to any question from management was always the same: I did not see anything. Ratting was the one sin without forgiveness. A known informer found his lunch missing, his tools misplaced, his machine mysteriously breaking down. Nobody spoke to him. He was alone in a building with 4,000 men. The silence was not about protecting wrongdoing. It was about a border. The floor governed the floor. The office governed paper. Today, companies build anonymous ethics hotlines and reward whistleblowers. In 1954, the whistle was for the end of the shift, and nothing else. Number 20. You settled it in the parking lot. When two men had a real problem, the kind that words could not fix, there was a procedure. You did not swing on the clock. You did not touch him near the machines. You said the words everyone understood, after the whistle. Then, at 3:30, behind the far end of the lot where the office windows could not see, the two men fought, surrounded by a loose ring of coworkers who made sure it stayed fair. No pipes, no knives, no jumping in. When one man went down, or both ran out of wind, it was over. Genuinely over. The next morning they nodded at each other, and the grievance was considered settled in full, more final than any arbitration. Foreman knew about every fight and reported none of them, because a settled dispute was better for production than a simmering one. Today, that fight means 2 terminations, an assault charge, and a security review. In 1955, it meant Wednesday afternoon, and by Thursday, the two men were eating lunch at the same table. Number 19. Never bust the rate. Here is the rule that confused every eager young man who walked through the gate. Working too fast was worse than working too slow. Every job had a rate, a quota negotiated in the invisible space between the union, the men, and the time study department. If the rate on a part was 200 pieces a shift, the men produced 210, maybe 215. Never 300, even if 300 was easy. Because the moment one man proved 300 was possible, the rate became 300 for everyone, forever, with no raise attached. The rate buster was a special kind of traitor. He was not cheating the company. He was robbing every man on the line of the margin that made the job survivable. Rate busters got frozen out, got their materials delayed, got their finished pieces miscounted. The pressure was patient and total until the man slowed down or quit. Today, we celebrate top performers with bonuses and leaderboards. In 1952, the top performer was a problem the floor solved quietly. First pattern break. Here is what you have to understand about all of these rules. The factory floor of the 1950s was 2 worlds occupying one building. There was the official world of company policy, posted on bulletin boards, written in the handbook, nobody read. And there was the real world, run by the men, enforced by the men, with its own courts, its own punishments, and its own economy. Management knew the second world existed, and mostly left it alone, because the second world delivered the production numbers. A foreman who tried to police the unspoken rules found that quality slipped and machines broke until he learned to see less. The code was not chaos. It was order, older than the company, and every rule on this list existed for one reason. 4,000 men doing dangerous work in one building need laws the office cannot provide. Number 18. The lunchroom seat was earned, not chosen. Nobody assigned seats in the break room, and yet every seat was assigned. The table by the window belonged to the tool and die men, the aristocrats of the plant. The millwrights had their corner. The assemblers filled the middle, and one specific chair at one specific table belonged to Big Ed or Whitey or whoever had held it since 1946. and a new man who sat in it got a silence so heavy he could feel it on his skin. Nobody yelled. Someone just said, "That seat is taken," even though the room was half empty. You picked up your lunch pail and you moved, and you did not sit down again anywhere until you understood the map. It took months to learn and one mistake to violate. The seating chart was the org chart, more accurate than anything in the personnel office. Today, open seating and forced team lunches erase all of it. But your grandfather could walk into that lunchroom and read 30 years of plant history in where every man sat. Number 17. You worked hurt and you never filed the paper. A mashed finger got wrapped in electrical tape. A burn got butter from the lunchroom, which was wrong, but it got butter. A back that popped got a wide leather belt cinched tight and a day of gritted teeth. Going to the plant nurse for anything short of a bone showing meant two things. The paperwork made your foreman look bad, and the men decided you were soft. There were machinists in every plant, missing fingertips, who had never filed a single injury report. They wrapped the hand, finished the shift, and drove themselves to the doctor after the whistle, paying cash. An accident-free department got the foreman a bonus, so everyone, injured man included, had a stake in the lie. The safety record on the wall said 340 days. The truth was written on the men's hands. Today, failing to report an injury violates federal law, and thank God for that. But the culture that hid the blood took decades to die. Number 16. Seniority was scripture. The man with 22 years did not wait in line behind the man with 3 years. Not for the good machine, not for overtime, not for the parking spot near the gate, not for the first crack at day shift. Seniority decided who got laid off in the bad years and who got called back first, and every man on the floor could recite his own number and the numbers of the 10 men around him. A young hotshot who lobbied the foreman for an older man's job committed something close to blasphemy, and even if he got it, he lost the floor forever. The system was rigid, and it protected mediocre men, and everybody knew it. But it also meant no man had to flatter a boss to survive, and no foreman could hand your livelihood to his nephew. Your place was math, not politics. Today, merit-based everything has erased seniority almost everywhere outside union halls, and a 25-year man can train his own replacement. In 1955, the years themselves were worth something, and everyone honored the count. Number 15. Monday morning belonged to the hungover. The unspoken agreement on Monday day shift was simple: light duty, low talk, and nobody scheduled anything that required a steady hand before 10 in the morning. Saturday was for the tavern, Sunday was for the family and the ball game and more of the tavern, and Monday was for surviving. Men covered for each other without being asked. The sharp-eyed ones took the precision work. The suffering ones got pointed towards sweeping, stacking, and anything involving a broom and mercy. A man genuinely unable to work got walked to a quiet corner behind the stock racks and woken at lunch. The foreman, who had been at the same tavern, asked no questions as long as the numbers held by Wednesday. It was a rhythm the whole industrial Midwest ran on. Today, showing up impaired is a termination and a safety incident. Then, it was Monday, and the whole floor carried its wounded together. Number 14. Every apprentice got initiated, and he took it. Here is the one that would bury a company in lawsuits today. The new apprentice got sent to the tool crib for a left-handed monkey wrench, a bucket of steam, 50 feet of shoreline, or a can of striped paint, and the crib attendant would send him to another department, which sent him to another, until the kid had walked 3 miles and every man in the plant knew his face. His lunch got nailed to the bench. His toolbox got filled with washers. He got sent to ask the toughest foreman in the building for a long wait, and the foreman would say, "Sure, wait right there," and leave him standing for an hour. The kid who took it and came back grinning was made. The kid who ran to the office was finished before he started. The pranks were a test with a real question inside. Can this man take pressure without cracking? Because next year, his cool head might be all that stands between you and a falling crane load. Today, it is called hazing, and it settles out of court. Then, it was a diploma. Second pattern break. Notice something about the men in these stories. Almost every one of them had been somewhere worse. The floor of 1955 was full of men who had waded ashore at Normandy, frozen at the Chosin Reservoir, or grown up hungry in the Depression, watching their fathers stand in bread lines. A stamping plant did not scare them. That is the context modern people miss when they judge these rules. The hazing, the silence, the fistfights, the worked-through injuries, all of it was run by men whose scale for hardship had been set in places a foreman's clipboard could not reach. They built a code that valued exactly what had kept them alive: loyalty, toughness, and knowing your role in the unit. The factory was the peacetime army, and the rules were the rules of a platoon. You do not have to admire all of it, but you cannot understand a single item on this list without knowing who wrote it. Number 13. Payday belonged to the numbers man. Every plant had one, and everyone knew who he was. He walked the floor with a folded newspaper and a pencil, taking dime and quarter bets on the daily number, running punch boards, holding the football pool money, and organizing the payday card game in the boiler room. On Friday, when the pay envelopes came around, actual cash in actual envelopes, he did more business than the company credit union. The weekly football pool at a big plant could hold $400, more than a month's wages for the winner. Management knew. The foreman played. The one rule was that the numbers man paid out honest and on time, and the ones who lasted 20 years never missed. Gambling on company property was fireable in the handbook and universal on the floor. Today, an employee running a cash gambling operation at work is looking at termination and possibly charges. In 1954, he was looking at a line of customers by the time clock, and he knew every one of them by name. Number 12. You punched your buddy's time card. The time clock by the gate was the company's most trusted instrument, and the men made it lie every single week. A man who needed to slip out an hour early for his daughter's recital, or who was stuck at the dentist, or who was face down at the tavern and coming in late, had one phone call to make. His partner punched him in, punched him out, and the card showed a full, clean shift. This was not casual. Getting caught punching another man's card was one of the few offenses that actually got men fired on the spot. Both of them, no grievance strong enough to save it. Which tells you what it meant that men did it anyway, constantly, for 40 years. You did not do it for strangers. You did it for your partner, and he did it for you, and the risk itself was the point. It was the floor's way of saying, my time is your time. Today, the badge scan reads your face. The machine finally won, but it took until the machine to stop them. Number 11. The foreman's blind eye had rules of its own. Everyone knew which lockers held bottles. The old finisher who needed 2 pulls of 4 roses to steady his hands after 30 years of vibration. The night shift welder who kept a pint behind his rod oven. The foreman knew every bottle in his department, and the deal was never spoken, but never broken. Keep it in the locker, keep it off your breath before noon, keep your numbers up, and the bottle does not exist. The moment a man got sloppy, showed up staggering, or endangered someone, the same foreman who had ignored the bottle for a decade would walk him out personally. The blind eye was not weakness, it was triage. A foreman who fired every man who drank would have run the plant alone. So he managed the line between a man's habit and a man's collapse for 60 men at once, with no training and no human resources department. Today there are employee assistance programs, and they save lives. Then there was one tired man with a clipboard, deciding daily what not to see. Number 10. Everyone got a nickname, and you answered to it. No man kept the name his mother gave him past his first month. The plant renamed you, usually for your worst feature, your worst day, or your hometown. Shorty was 6'4". Speedy was the slowest man in shipping. A man who dropped a full tray of bearings in 1948 was Crash until he retired in 1971. Tiny, Preacher, Popcorn, Half Shift, Whitey, Polak Joe. Some names were affectionate, some were rough, and a few would empty a modern human resources office in minutes. But the rule was absolute. You took your name and you wore it. Complaining about it guaranteed it stuck harder, and worse, it told the floor you did not understand what the name meant. A nickname meant they saw you. The men nobody bothered to rename were the men nobody trusted. There were workers whose real names their own partners did not learn until the retirement cake. Today, a demeaning nickname is a documented incident. Then, it was a baptism. Number 9. The calendar wall. Behind every tool crib, inside every locker door, above every workbench hung the pin-up calendars, the rigid tool girls, the Vargas pages torn from Esquire, the gas station giveaways. They were simply part of the visual landscape of industrial America, as standard as the safety posters nobody read. Salesmen handed them out like business cards, and a supplier who showed up in December without calendars lost orders. The plant was a male world, wall to wall, and the walls proved it. When women entered the floor in real numbers in the decades that followed, those walls became one of the first battlegrounds, and the calendars came down slowly, department by department. Today, that wall is a textbook hostile work environment case, decided law, gone for good reason. But every man who worked a 1955 machine shop remembers exactly whose bench had the best one. Number 8. Safety guards were for inspection day. The stamping press came from the factory with guards, and the guards came off because the guards cost you 8 seconds a cycle, and the rate did not care about your 8 seconds. Grinders ran without shields. Pulleys ran open. Men reached into dies that could take a hand off, on a rhythm, thousands of times a shift, trusting their timing like trapeze artists. When the state inspector was scheduled, and he was always somehow scheduled rather than a surprise, the guards reappeared overnight, gleaming, and vanished again by Friday. The men resisted the guards as much as management did, because the men were paid by the piece, and the guard was slower. It took OSHA in 1970 and a generational culture change to end it. Today, defeating a machine guard is instant termination, and lockout-tagout is religion. Your grandfather's plant averaged injuries that would shut a modern facility down for a month and called it a good year. Number 7. The tricks were earned, never taught. A master machinist carried 30 years of secrets in his hands. The exact feel of a perfect thread. The trick for holding a tolerance on a worn-out lathe. The way to hear a tool going dull before it ruined the part. None of it was written down, and none of it was free. The old man watched an apprentice for years before he gave up his first real secret, and he gave it the same way every time. Without warning, without explanation, a big hand suddenly on top of yours, adjusting your grip, then walking away. Asking directly got you nothing. Knowledge was rank, and giving it away too fast cheapened 30 years of paying for it. Companies today spend fortunes on knowledge transfer programs because when those men retired, entire libraries died with them. Skills that made American manufacturing the envy of the world lived in the space between one man's hands and another man's patience, and we let most of it walk out the gate uncopied. Third pattern break. Here is the strangest part of this whole list. The men who followed these rules loved those plants. Ask them. The ones still alive light up describing buildings that deafened them, burned them, and took their fingers. Because the floor gave them things the modern workplace has never figured out how to provide. A place in a permanent order, men who would carry them through a bad month without a form to fill out, and the certainty that the man at the next machine would be there in 20 years. The average worker at a major plant in 1955 stayed 26 years. The code was harsh because it was built to last that long. You were not managing a 2-year stint before your next move. You were choosing the men you would grow old next to. Every unspoken rule was really the same rule. Act like you will be here forever, because you will. Number 6. You banked your pieces. Beating the rate did not mean turning in extra pieces. It meant hiding them. A fast man who hit his quota by 1 p.m. did not report 260 pieces. He reported 210 and stashed the extra 50 in a drawer behind a column inside an empty crate, his private savings account of finished work. Then, on the day his machine broke down, or his head pounded, or his kid kept him up all night, he turned in his banked pieces and showed a perfect count. Every man had a stash, every foreman suspected it, and the whole system ran on the fiction. Banking smoothed the bad days, protected the rate, and gave a man a cushion the company never knew it was funding. Old-timers retired and left caches of finished parts hidden in the building, discovered years later during renovations. Today, real-time tracking counts every piece the second it is made, and the bank is extinct. It was the floor inventing its own insurance. Number 5. Everybody lied to the time study man. When the man from the office appeared with his clipboard and stopwatch to time your job, the entire department transformed. Suddenly, every motion was heavy. Suddenly, the part needed 3 inspections. Men who could do the job blindfolded developed elaborate, exhausted rituals, wiping, checking, adjusting, walking to the far bin instead of the near one. The performance had to be believable, tired but honest-looking, slow but never obviously slow, because the number on that clipboard became the rate, and the rate became your life. Old hands coached apprentices on the craft of it. Never look at him, never speed up when he leaves, keep the act going all day because he might come back. The time study men knew, the men knew they knew, and the negotiation happened inside a shared lie. Today, censors time everything invisibly. But for 40 years, the American production rate was set by the best actors in the building, and it was some of the finest theater this country ever produced. Number 4. The whistle owned the work, completely and exactly. You were at your machine when the start whistle blew, not walking to it, at it, and this the men enforced on themselves. But the other side of the law mattered more. When the quitting whistle blew, you stopped. Mid-part, mid-cut, mid-anything. Working past the whistle for free was not dedication. It was theft from every man in the building, because free work was work the company did not have to pay overtime for, and a man who gave it away made every other man look like he was holding back. The wash-up line formed at the sinks 5 minutes before the whistle by custom, lunch pails already in hand, and when the sound came, 1,000 men hit the gate like a dam breaking. The company got every minute it paid for, and not 1 second more, and both sides considered this perfectly honorable. Today, salaried culture and unpaid overtime have blurred every edge of the workday. Your grandfather would look at a man answering work emails at 9 p.m., unpaid, and simply not understand what he was seeing. Number 3. Scrap and homers walked out the gate, and management let it happen. Here is the theft the intro promised. Every plant in America leaked material out the front gate in lunch pails, and everyone knew. Cut-off ends of bar stock, damaged fittings, a handful of bolts, a quart of paint in a thermos. And beyond the scrap, the homers, things men made for themselves on company machines with company steel. Fireplace pokers, tomato stakes, hitch pins, toys for the kids at Christmas, 1,000 basement workshops across the Midwest furnished entirely in midnight requisitions. The rule had limits, and the limits were the point. Scrap, yes. New stock, no. Small, yes. Saleable quantity, no. A man who took a poker was a craftsman. A man who took a case of copper fittings to sell was a thief, and the floor froze him out before the company ever caught him. Management tolerated the leak because stopping it would cost more in goodwill than the metal was worth. Today, gate searches and inventory software have ended it. But somewhere in your family's garage sits a strange, beautifully made object with no brand name on it. Now you know where it came from. Number 2. You never crossed a picket line. Not your own union's line, not another union's line, not any line, anywhere, ever. This rule extended past the gate, past the industry, past the town. A factory man on vacation would not walk into a struck hotel. His wife would not cross a grocery strike for milk. The scab was the one figure lower than the rat, and the memory was permanent. Men were still refusing to drink with strikebreakers from the 1930s conflicts 25 years later in the same taverns, at opposite ends of the bar. During the Great Steel Strike of 1959, 500,000 men held a line for 116 days, and the discipline that held it was not written in any Union constitution. It was this rule, learned at kitchen tables from fathers who had bled for the 8-hour day. You could argue against the strike in the hall and vote no, but when the line went up, you were on it. Solidarity was not a slogan. It was the mortgage on everything the previous generation had bought with broken heads. Number 1. The man beside you came before the company, before the foreman, before yourself. Every rule on this list is a branch of this one. You watched your partner's hands near the press. You yanked him back from the crane load without being thanked. You carried his output the week his wife was in the hospital and reported the count as his. You worked doubled up and silent the month he buried his son, and when he finally spoke about it years later at the tavern, you bought the round and changed the subject. The company was a landlord. The floor was a family. A man could lose his job and land at a plant across town by Monday on nothing but the word of the men he had stood next to, a phone call from one stranger to another. He is all right. He was with us. That sentence was the highest credential in industrial America, worth more than any reference letter the office could type. And no policy, no handbook, and no HR department has ever replaced it. Here is my challenge. If your father or grandfather worked a factory floor, ask him about one thing on this list before the chance is gone. Ask about the nicknames. Ask what he made on company steel. Ask who taught him his first trick, and how long the old man made him wait. Then, come back and tell me what he said, because I want to know if the timecard stories or the parking lot stories get more comments. These were not just rules. They were a country we used to live in, and the last men who remember it are still here, waiting to be asked.